Um, just to come back to CTAN and Tech Live, I jotted down a couple of other things here. One is that an important record of all of this history we've been talking about is the Tech User Group journal TUGboat. And I checked this morning, there are more than 4,700 articles since the first issue in 1980. There are about 4,600 authors, and when I sort them just to find unique names, there's about 1,200 of them. So that's a lot of people who contributed to it. And essentially all of the articles, except for the latest issue, are available free online at tug.org/tugboat. The Bibliography Archives at Utah, there's two projects, the Tech User Group Archive, bibnet Project Archive. Collectively, they have about 1,300 bibliographies and occupy about 12 gigabytes. And they represent 1.6 million entries, 36 million authors, of which about 900,000 are distinct. So there's an awful lot of material that's available. And in response to Philip's observation earlier about the problem with bibliography formatting, it's worth remembering that in the early 2000s, the Digital Object Identifier, DOI system was introduced with the notion that it was a distinct label for every published document. So a book would have a DOI and a journal article would, and a poem in a collection of poems might have its own DOI. And if all of our entries in our bibliographies had DOI values, then publishers could use those to reformat the bibliography in any format they cared to. And that would be, I think, a great boon. And so I've made a great effort in these two archives at Utah to collect DOI data. And we have about, for post-2000 publication, we have about 70% of them now having DOI values. Smaller publishers may not assign them. They cost a small amount. TUGboat will be getting DOI values fairly shortly. We're in the process of organizing that. The beauty of the DOI is it separates the document itself from its publisher. For books, you tend to think this book was published, say, by Addison Wesley, and if a new edition comes out, it's still published by Addison Wesley. But with journals, that's not the case. Journals view, publishers of journals view the journals as a commodity that they buy and sell. And so a particular journal over, say, a 50-year lifespan may reside at 3 or 4 different publishers. And so having the archives tied to the publisher site is not a good idea. And the DOI has the advantage that it now hides all representation of any publisher and just has a unique handle that's maintained by the DOI.org resolver that will translate any given DOI you could input to it into current publication information for that article, including current publisher and its web location and usually PDF file location as well. So DOIs, I think, are a very important thing, and we really should be making a very strong effort to include them, and that's one of the reasons we're getting them into TUGboat.
I'd like to follow on that. And I have a little bit of inside knowledge, if you like, about DOIs, because I used to work for Cambridge University Press when they still did typesetting. And what will happen, for example, is that the publisher of the bulletin, let me first of all say the American Mathematical Society is quite exceptional because it is, if you like, its own publisher. And going back to the early days, the existence of the American Mathematical Society, I think, was a great impetus for the generation of tech because it provided the first customer, the first big customer for publishing. And it also provided a strong connection between Don Knuth's work in Stanford and the working mathematician. So Don Knuth gave a Gibbs lecture, I think it was, on mathematical typography that was remarkably influential, and was published in the Bulletin of the American Mathematical Society, which gets sent to all its members. Now, the London Mathematical Society publishes journals, but when I say it publishes them, they're the London Mathematical Society journals, but the London Mathematical Society isn't a publishing house. It doesn't have the resources of a publishing house. And the actual work of publishing, and that includes the hosting of the websites and so forth, will be done, for example, by Cambridge University Press. But that's a contract that can be changed. And when the contract is changed, the whole back issues go through to the new publisher. That's the way it works. So the DOI allows journals to be transferred from one publisher to another without the URLs breaking. So the point about the DOI is it gives you an unbreakable URL.